Greetings fanboys and fangirls, Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever. Today I'm bringing you a review of a Mattel Creations Masters of the Universe Origins figure. That's right, it's Fangor. Of course 2023 has been the year of the Snake Men in Origins. It's been a very exciting time to be like me, who is a massive Snake Men fan. They're my favorite faction of Masters villains. So it's really been a big deal for me to see all these Snake Men related releases. In particular, I've always really loved the design work behind Fangor. If you're unfamiliar with the character, Fangor was first conceived in, I believe, the Masters of the Universe Classics mini-comics that we would get. He was glimpsed in some of the battles and was just a really spectacular design. So eventually that led to him being part of the first wave of Super 7 product when they took over Masters of the Universe Classics. Since then, Fangor has become fully integrated into the Masters of the Universe lines thanks to this new Origins figure, and I can't wait to check him out. Before we begin though, be sure that if you haven't yet to subscribe to the channel, it really does help us out, and be sure to like the video. Also, be sure to comment down below letting me know what you think about this new release. With all that out of the way, let's begin. So the great thing about Fangor is he serves a purpose as a member of the Snake Men that previously hadn't really been filled as a role. He is the weapons master or the technology guy on the Snake Men. And it's a great idea because, you know, we have lots of technology in the Horde. And of course, we've always had man-at-arms in the regular Masters. But with these guys, they needed somebody to kind of do their technology. And Fangor does fill that role. As a matter of fact, according to his old bio, he was tutored by Snake Man-at-Arms. So it kind of allows him to be a more unique character in that role and not so reliant on Man-at-Arms. Of course, as I've shown you, the artwork, the pencil sketches that we see on both sides of the shipper box are just incredible and would put most regular packaging to shame. Before we look at the actual figure itself, you do get a mini comic, of course, and this comes bundled behind the figure. It's called Eternia Remastered, and it's really, really wild. As a matter of fact, I'm still not exactly sure what to make of some of the beats in the story. It's not especially watered down, and it's I won't show the end of it or anything, but I'm still not exactly sure what they were getting at with it. I don't know. It was neat, though. It was a cool story, and there's certainly a neat potential for a new He-Man variant in there. But we'll see. We'll see if it goes anywhere or if it's just a weird one-off. And here we have him, the most handsome man in the universe, Fangor. Seriously, all kidding aside, this is a really cool looking figure. Just upon first glance, you immediately, I think, realize the visual flair and appeal of Fangor as a character. It's an outrageous design with these giant teeth that kind of extend, and he just seems very intimidating. Great parts use on the character, and truly does stand out amongst the Snake Men. He's a very original looking design. So I've always felt like that he was a great addition to the crew, and it always seemed like a very natural fit. You can see that they do have the Snake Men sticker on the front like we've seen throughout the year. Here's a little bit closer look, and here's some excellent artwork. It's the colored version of what we saw on that shipper box. Speaking of artwork, I mean, I guess some of my biases are showing here, but this is probably my favorite piece of artwork that's been featured on the packaging for Origins. You might be wondering, well, why on earth would that be the case? Well, it's all because of Hero. I'm a massive fan of Hero. He might be my favorite Masters character, and I just love it. This is such a cool painting. I will definitely be trying to display this as best I can, and that makes it all the sweeter that this is completely collector friendly. So you can see the Masters logo at the top, and when I say collector friendly, I just mean that you're simply able to take the card out and you're left with a plastic backing. So you'll be able to replace this just like the day you got it. And here he is, old Fangor, right out of the packaging. So first impressions, absolutely great with this guy. He definitely looks intimidating. The design really comes together. It's amazing to me how that design from the Classics era still comes across so strong, and not even the stylization or the kind of retro stylings of the Origins line takes away from it in any kind of way. Now to me, that's absolute proof that the best revisionist Masters designs are the ones that you could put back into this form factor and it still works, and it still looks like something that might have come out during that time, but maybe a little more detailed than what was possible back then, or likely, I guess, back then. Let's go ahead and talk about the sculpt. That's where I always like to start. I love how you've got kind of this shininess going on in the mouth, and that being kind of this dark brown, or kind of there's almost a hint of burgundy in there, that really contrasts well with the teeth, and it really does make him look snake-like and threatening. I also like how the eyes are just kind of big and there's no pupils in them. There's not even the slits that we see in a lot of the other snake men's eyes, so it almost makes him seem completely more bestial and cruel. So I think that's a great attribute for a villain. I also really like the weird shape that they have going on with the head here. I think that's very impressive. You see how it does this kind of, swoop right there? And there's little layers and things. I just think that's an original way to take it. I think it's also a great use of, say, the King Hiss arms here and the King Hiss legs, but you also have some brand new boot pieces, which are really nice original sculpts as far as I know. And I love the Snake Men symbol in gold right there on the belt. I especially like the two little snakes that are meeting. He just seems like a retro figure, but just a little more detailed, a little more modern-esque. So I think that it's a great look. I especially like the flared out nostrils up here. I think that one thing that maybe is slightly weird, and I think it probably has to do with the way that you can switch out mouthpieces, is, to me, he's showing a lot of gums right there at the top. And I think that it almost hurts the illusion that the fangs are coming from his mouth. I understand why they do it, because I think that, that's a thing with snakes, that you will see a lot of the gum protruding with the fangs. But it still looks maybe a little odd. I don't think it's that bad, though. I think it's very minor, very minor. There is one weird thing going on with mine, where on the back, it almost appears that there's a coating of some kind of super glue or something. It's like a crazy glue kind of coating back here. And it's very possible that, I think I'm getting some of it right now, that I'll be able to just work that off with my fingernail or something, but it's kind of strange just in one dab. Probably something weird that happened at the factory. You just never know, I guess. But it's there, so it's a little shiny and a little crusty feeling just on the belt there in one spot. How bizarre. Let's look at some of his accessories before we switch out his fangs into the other mode. Here you have this really, really gnarly, weird sword. And I love this kind of weapon where it's this atypical sword. It's very kind of uneven. It has like a big hook there. And I think this could look absolutely lethal, because for one thing, you can use this little bend in it here to get some really awful looking stuff. Let's say Cobra Khan here is shooting off at the mouth, and he literally is. You can take that little curve, put it like this, and it looks like that he's being decapitated, because it's kind of, his neck takes up that negative space in the sword. So it's going to be a really cool thing when you're doing, figure photography, if you want to go to those kinds of crazy extremes. I think the one thing is that this is Mattel Creations exclusive, so you would almost expect them to have some kind of paint hit on a sword like this, but instead it's all silver plastic. Now, I've already talked about how I don't like paint on handles because they just seem to wear off lately on Mattel's figures, but I think some kind of paint accent would have been very smart, even if it had just been this little dot that got painted. Now, the other thing he comes with is more of an homage to the original accessory set that he included for the Super 7 figure back in the day with the Classics one. And it's this cool wrench that he's got here. And I like how it doesn't just look like a regular, wrench that we would have here on Earth. This one is, it has a weird snaky handle, but it goes with his role as this like mechanic, this weapons guy for the Snake Men. And it's gold too, which I really like. Would I have liked to have seen some silver up here on the actual metal part? Yes, I would have. I would have liked to have seen some kind of paint variation. But other than that, I really do think it's a cool accessory. And it would be really fun to have him down working on stuff, he's rolling around on his back trying to get something started, like a roton or something. By the way, I don't know if you guys have been seeing this, but those rotons are getting clearanced out for nothing at Walmart's right now. And I got me and a couple of my friends, Brandon and TJ, who I've mentioned on here before, we all got some rotons for $5 a pop. So, I mean, they're out there happy hunting. And if you're like me and you just wanted an extra roton for $5, yeah, I'll do an extra roton for sure. But yeah, it's just a fun opportunity. All right, so moment of truth. To switch out those fangs, I believe that all we have to do is just pull, and you can see that he's got some real extreme gingivitis here, and he just hasn't been taking care of himself. And you know, it's unfortunate, because when Grandpa Snake Man wakes up and he doesn't have his dentures, yeah, where are the dentures? You know, like that. He's pitiful. Poor feller. Poor feller. This is hilarious. I think it's really funny because there's no, you know, flexing in the jaw. There's no give. So his mouth is just going to be permanently agape. And, you know, without teeth, he's, hey, man, get off my lawn. Anyway, you can see that they just kind of have like a little, couple of little protrusions here that just fit back into the back of his gums, like it's a little space that goes to the back of the mouth at the roof of the mouth, and you just push it in, and let me get it in there a little bit better. Yeah, I think that's about the extent of it. So here we have Fangor with his long fangs in, and I'll go ahead and tell you that I'm actually filming this segment after the initial review. This is hours after I filmed the other parts of this review that you'll see. And it's when I realized that it just wasn't sitting right with me the way that I had the fangs looking on my sample. And if you look, you'll see what I'm talking about. And during that segment, I made the comment that, hey, I may try to put him in some hot water and see what happens. Well, of course, for anybody who's dealt with action figures for long enough, you know about the concept of plastic memory. And that's that if you heat up plastic and you let it cool, especially if you run cold water over it right after you heat it, that plastic will return to its original molded shape if heated up. It won't work every time, but most of the time this is a thing. And certainly that appears to be the case here. To say that it's daylight and dark is an understatement. Now the fangs are completely straightened out, as you can see. And this wasn't me bending it or trying to shape it in any particular way. It was literally just me putting the fangs in the hot water just for a few seconds, taking them out and running cold water over it, and they just fix themselves. So all I can say is I implore you to make sure that you do the same with yours, because that's probably the only way that your fangs will be as straight as they should be. Pretty much attorney in braces at this point, right? And of course, it's a real shame that they packaged it in such a way that would compromise the integrity of the sculpt on those teeth, something that is so important to this particular character. This does make a world of difference when it comes to what I expected from the figure and what I was hoping that it would look like. You know, in the first pass on this review, I'd said something along the lines of, well, I just don't see myself displaying him with these long teeth. Well, the reason I felt that way was because they were all warped up and they weren't spaced correctly. But with them being restored now, yeah, I would definitely display him with the longer teeth, because not only do they look good, it does accentuate that thing that makes Fangor special, his certain Snake Man power. And of course, just keep in mind that through the rest of the review, when you do see this head on, it will be the old footage, and it'll just maybe help you appreciate how much running that hot water over this really did help it out for this. So most of the time when you see it later, it will indeed be those warped teeth. See, though, the real fun with this head comes in the posing and the photography aspect. And yes, I'm going to get my money's worth out of those Ramen Toys heads. And here's my Dolph Lundgren head that was made for Origins. And be sure to check out my Ramen Toys Dolph head review. You see, I like this because it looks like he's in mid-attack or mid-bite or something like that. Especially cool is you can take Snake Armor He-Man's claw and you can kind of have it around the neck. And you see, I've always thought that that claw was made specifically to hold the necks of the Snake Men like that. And the more you can angle his head back, the cooler it looks. There he is trying to bite into He-Man's arm. I think that's awesome. Helped tremendously by the power of Lundgren. Ah, get it off! And clearly I woke up and chose violence against poor Fangor, because clearly he continues to suffer greatly. Whee! And even though there aren't necessarily a lot of surprises when it comes to articulation, I suppose we may as well have a look for tradition's sake, if nothing else. Just so you can see, the head doesn't really have any kind of problem, and you can go way down and way up. I especially like how deep the head can go down, so that's nice. As always, you can get a little over 90 degrees with the shoulder there. You can bring the arm all the way around. There is a rotation at the elbow. It does about 90 degrees as usual. You can spin the hand, there's a hinge, and you can rotate the waist. There is some splits action right here, so he's pretty acrobatic. You can get some pretty good forward kicks, but just like King Hiss before him, it's not much. Of course, you have a rotating knee right there. You have pretty good knee hinge that can get you just about 90 degrees. And of course, we have a boot swivel, and we have ankle pivot and hinges so that you can get those deep poses. Matter of fact, let's see what he can do. Without any cutting or editing or anything like that, it was pretty easy to get him to hit one of those really deep poses and have him flat foot it pretty much. So I think that works really well. Definitely one thing that I wanted to do is to show you that it is possible to take off the tunic or the chest armor here. It is a lot more bendable, it's a lot more rubbery than this kind of stuff he usually is. Kind of reminds me more of Masters of the Universe Classics, actually. It's got more of that feel to it. So if you want to, you can totally just have him be bare-chested instead. And I think that this still looks pretty good. Of course, there's a wealth of items we can put on him now because we have such a big parts library. And although it's a fairly tight fit, I actually think this is kind of a cool look, don't you think? He looks pretty outrageous like this, but the colors work the same as they do with Moss Man, so I think that's pretty cool. Of course, everybody's hustling to try to get this combination done, right? Well, maybe not, but still, this is definitely something you can do. If you want He-Man to, you know, be a trader of some sort and wear this chic snake vest, you can do that. And for all those people like me that looks at General Rat lore and thinks that he just looks naked because you're used to the general version of the character from the 2000X series with the chest harness, you can totally put this on there, but his chest is too big to actually have it connect on the sides. However, it lays on there really nice, so you could do this. It doesn't look great, but you could do it. And of course, Ton Lashor has to keep up with the hottest fashions in the world of the Snake Men, and you can see that he can wear that too. However, it doesn't completely fasten on both sides, but you could probably stretch it to where it could. I got it fastened on one side, but not the other, but I just didn't want to push it. It looks all right. Now, I will tell you something that is surprisingly cool, and that is the Lords of Power Beastman vest on Fangor. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I love all the spikes and everything and how wicked it makes them look. So that is a terrific combination. Yeah, you can have that one on me. And yes, the bizarrety continues because you can certainly do the inverse here. And it's kind of a weird look, right? But hey, you can do it. I also almost hate how good this looks because this would mean that Moss Man was like a horrible traitor to the cause and a traitor to the planet Eternia. But it looks incredible. I mean, really, the brown matches really well with the furry underwear, and then you have the green snakes, and you know, it's almost a shame that it just doesn't work in terms of story. However, you could totally say that, you know, maybe the Snake Men took over his mind temporarily or something. Plus, you could, I suppose, switch out the head, and now you can say he is an enslaved green gorilla on one of the planets that the Snake Men conquered using their starship. Yeah, I mean, I think that could actually work for me. And on that same merit, the greens are similar enough to where you could take the alternate Moss Man head and just put it on Fangor to create some kind of weird hybrid monster. I mean, if nothing else, it's a pretty cool design, really. Speaking of similar greens, here's definitely something you could do. I don't think it looks all that good, but you know, you could put Fangor's head on Cobra Khan. However, he just has too much of a barrel chest for that, I think. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, I think that the neck maybe looks a little too long once you do the opposite, but it still looks pretty cool. He just ends up looking huge because the head doesn't really set right on the body. However, you know, if you wanted Cobra Khan to look like this, you totally could, and I think it looks all right. The mini-comic does seem to imply that Fangor is the one who's pretty much affiliated or in charge of these like Horde Trooper Snake Men, the mechanical versions. So I think that's interesting, and certainly something that does motivate me to make me want to buy at least one more of these guys, because I think that's fun. The mini-comic also suggests that he's trying to win the hand of Lady Slither so that he can be crowned the true ruler of the Snake Men, which I think is interesting and will go well with the actual Lady Slither figure, so I think they're trying to theme them together. And I know they're evil and all that, but let's face it, the Snake Men family reunion is one of the most happening events of the year, and as a villain, if you're not invited, then you're off the list, man. You know, unfortunately, I don't have the original Fangor figure from Super 7. That was at a time when those were just prohibitively expensive, and I just couldn't get it. It just wasn't going to happen. I will say that I think this is a really cool update to that figure, and here's a picture of that figure if you want to see how he compares. And you may be thinking, if Fangor, if he's supposed to be the evil snake master of technology and vehicles and all that, well, I don't have any kind of snake man vehicle to put him in. Wrong. You probably do. The Sky Sled here, don't forget about it. Remember, the Sky Sled has the alternate head attachment for the front. That's the snake head instead of like a griffin head. And it makes a world of difference. You kind of automatically have an evil warrior vehicle or snake man vehicle that literally has a snake on the front for your evil master of technology on the Snake Men side. So I think that this is a great thing to do, and definitely an idea I have for maybe displaying mine. And of course, don't forget that with the Ground Ripper / Road Ripper / whatever Mattel is legally obligated to call it this week, you can also throw Fang-OR on it, and it looks really cool. Quick tip on the seat belt here, it won't fit around the waist unless you tuck it behind the belt. That's the only way it can possibly reach that even first opening there, because any other way and the belt makes his waist too thick. You know, this figure just serves to make me even more excited for that Snake Men versus He-Man pack that they have coming out, which should be released anytime now. And I'm really hoping that, you know, that it's going to continue to just broaden our Snake Men. It's just such a cool army builder pack, and seeing things like Fangor come out, it's just really incredible. And Lady Slither is just going to be the icing on top of the cake. And of course, getting characters like Squeeze is going to help broaden that even more. So it's just a really exciting time to be a big fan of the Snake Men like I am. And it's worked out really well for me in 2023. With that being said, I do suggest that you grab this Fangor figure. Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, it did sell out on Mattel Creations, but I do feel like it was one of those times where they did have a pretty fair amount of stock in place. I think that he stayed in stock for maybe an hour or so, maybe. I'm not really sure. I just knew I got in, got mine, and got out. But it wasn't one of those things where you sold out in like 2 minutes and it was impossible. I do understand, however, that a lot of people won't be able to grab him due to work and things like that. So that does really bite for people who did want him, and I do hope Mattel will see the need to continue to maybe offer him again in some other way. Of course, for better or worse, for most of our Origins figures, the unique ones anyway, that are replications of the old originals are going to be on Mattel Creations as exclusives. So whether we like it or not, it's going to be a reality that we just have to adjust to. Well, friends, that will do it for me. I certainly hope that you've enjoyed this review, and I certainly hope that you go ahead and subscribe, like the video, and comment down below and let me know what you thought about Fangor here. I think he's a really great addition to the rest of the Snake Men, and it's just another hit in a long line of them from Mattel in this particular faction of characters. Of course, I'll continue doing many more Masters reviews and many other toy lines as well, so just keep your eyes peeled for that here on the channel. And as always, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out. Hey man, get off my lawn.